Now welcome again to another Visual Basic lecture. This time round I'm going to talk about variables, though I've been talking about variables and so far I'm sure you understand what variables are. So variables are simply some memory locations where we may need to store some values temporarily as we are executing a program. So when the program is executing, it requires a place to store values which keep on changing because your program keeps on working on values and giving outputs. So we call them variables. And variables are normally created depending on the type of data you're dealing with. So if I'm dealing with an integer or I'm dealing with a number that is integral number, then I'll have to use an integer. If I'm dealing with floats, then I may use single. If I'm dealing with strings, I may have to use some string data type and what have you. Now there are rules that help us to declare or to come up with these variables. We say a variable can contain any alphanumeric letters A to Z or 0 to 9. You can mix them to give it a name, because a variable must be a name, and that name must be descriptive enough. That means use a name that describes what you're storing. If I'm storing age, I'll say int age. If I'm storing salary, I'll say maybe double salary or what have you. So let them be descriptive enough. Then a variable also name can be, you can avoid using special characters because these special characters, they are reserved to mean something in your program. So avoid using special characters and avoid using some keywords, key Visual Basic words that are used. Don't use them because they will mean something in the code. Again, we normally advocate here where you have a variable that is going to have more than one name, then you can use an underscore to separate the names and make sure you capitalize each name. Yeah, we use such kind of naming convention to make sure your variables at least they are clear. For example, an example can be a variable called full name. So I can say full underscore name. It is valid. But we don't encourage the use of a dash or a hyphen or a full stop or a space. Okay, so when you're naming your variables, you must make sure avoid spacing, avoid dots, what you call a period, avoid also using hyphen. Use an underscore and then avoid those keywords. And the length of a variable in Visual Basic can be up to 255 characters. So make sure your variable doesn't go beyond 255 characters. Now, what is it that we can store in a variable? We can store the result of an expression.